Okay, I'd like to call to order our Tuesday, March 15th, 2022 meeting. It is 3 p.m. and ask the mayor to lead us in invocation and pledge of allegiance.
Thank you, Charlie. Lord, we thank you once again for a wonderful day, a wonderful city. We ask that you watch over our citizens and our friends and neighbors and guests that are here for Race Week, and hopefully we'll have a very eventful, uneventful race. We ask that you watch over everyone to be safe. We ask especially to continue prayers for citizens of Ukraine and the struggles that they're going through. We ask that all we do in your name. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. And roll call, please.
Mayor Shute.
Here.
Bishop.
Here.
Carlisle.
Here.
Detman.
Here.
Stewart.
Here.
Lawrence.
Here.
What'd you say?
Yeah, I'd like to announce business from the audience procedure. If you have anything you would like to talk to council about and it is not on the agenda, if you'll see Miss Kathy Haley, she'll give you the proper form to fill out, and at the appropriate time, we'll listen to what you have to say. Thank you. Mayor's report.
A couple things. If you all haven't noticed, it's Race Week. We have a few people coming into town. A lot of people here and a lot more coming. So, like I said, hopefully we'll have a safe, great race. The weather looks to be good hopefully after 8 o'clock tonight. We'll have a little bit of rain and knock the dust down. But this is the biggest event that the county has, and it should be a good one. The WEC, we're going to have two full days of racing plus several other races. But if you got a chance to go out there, do it. I'd also like to congratulate Roland Bishop and Terry Mandel for their election, and Charlie Lawrence. I just have to say thank you for your service for 6 years. It's been my honor and pleasure really to be part of it with you. We didn't always agree, but we always came out in the end and shook hands, and you attacked it like a business, and I appreciate all you've done and what you've done for the city, not just on the council, but also the businesses that you had and just being here. So, but appreciate your service, Charlie. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
That's about all I have.
Okay. Council members, comments and concerns. Start with you, Mr. Detman.
No report, sir.
Mr. Bishop.
No, sir. All's good.
Mr. Stewart.
No report, but thank you, Charlie, for 6 years. It's been good.
Thank you. And Mr. Carlisle.
I just want to say the same thing. It's been a pleasure working with you. Like the mayor said, we don't always agree, but when we walked out here, we were still friends. So, and that's what counts. And congratulations to the two that did win.
Thank you. Okay. We'll go on to the consent agenda.
I make a motion we accept the consent agenda as proposed.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions from council members? Any comments or questions from the public? Okay, Kathy, would you call the roll, please?
Bishop.
Yes.
Carlisle.
Yes.
Detman.
Yes.
Stewart.
Yes.
Lawrence.
Yes. Okay, we have no old business. That's going to move us on to new business 10A. 10A is a public hearing on Ordinance 1483, a city-initiated request to add mini warehousing and car care center wash uses to Section 26140 of the Seabring Code of Ordinances. So we are going to go into a public hearing now. So this will start the public hearing. Mr. Swain, would you introduce the ordinance, please?
Yes, sir. Ordinance number 1483 is entitled an ordinance amending Chapter 26 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Seabring regarding certain text established in Article 4, Division 2, Section 26-140, C1 Commercial District to add mini warehousing and car care center uses to the C1 District, repealing all ordinances in conflict, providing for severability, providing for conflict, providing for codification, and providing an effective date.
Okay, the purpose of the public hearing is to receive public input on an ordinance which will amend add mini warehousing and car care center car wash uses to section 26-140 of the Seabring Code of Ordinances. So for Central Florida Regional Planning Council, staff report, Ms. Dana Rydell.
Good afternoon, Dana Riddell. It's good to see you all today with the Central Florida Regional Planning Council. For the record, it looks like I won't have a PowerPoint at this moment, but that's okay. It was really only one slide. We have very minimal changes in this particular ordinance. As you know, we've had some recent developments in the city limits of Seabring. We have a potential mini warehouse coming, and we have car washes who either exist or are interested in existing along US 27. And those uses are already allowed in the downtown mixed use zoning district, which is a less intense zoning district. So when we started getting questions as to whether or not we should allow those things on 27, it really seemed like that's something that should generally be outright allowed. And our code doesn't always list every single thing that's allowed in each district, but we just wanted to eliminate any confusion. So we wanted to add that in the C1 district, car care centers or car washes would be an outright permitted use, as well as mini storage, in parentheses, self-storage / mini warehouse. So it is probably less than 10 words that we've added, and I will turn it back over to you, Councilman Lawrence.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions from council members?
Yeah, actually, one question. Is there any issues with the car washes as far as the runoff from the, as far as DEP or anything like that we need to take into consideration?
Yeah, so that is a hot topic over the last couple years with DEP, because there were a lot of car washes in this area and all throughout the county, all throughout the state, who were just redirecting their runoff into the runoff ditches or stormwater ditches. And that water essentially goes back into our lakes and goes back to places it shouldn't be. So anytime a new car wash is proposed and it's permitted, it has to have DEP permitting, and DEP requires that they put a system in place to collect their own water and either reuse it or clean it or dispose of it in an effective manner so that it doesn't go back into our lakes.
So the existing ones are considered grandfathered?
I actually don't think that they are. I think they're just in non-compliance. That would be a question for DEP, but from my experience, DEP has gone out and cracked down on a lot of those car wash locations. Some of them may have come into compliance, some of them may not have yet, but I have seen car washes get shut down in recent years because of their non-compliance.
I think the couple that are left open, that are still doing that, they received letters for compliance, but I don't think they ever came into compliance. So how do we push that forward to say, hey, 'cause I'm in agreement with you. We had one downtown that was, the water ran down Franklin Street right into the lake.
Yeah, I think that one,
It's
That's
closed.
gone.
it's closed.
It's closed at night.
But we got, there's
There's
two on the
others.
highway that are out there, and
Yeah.
now we have, I don't know, Jones Oil and Tire, did they have a collection system out there? Cause I noticed they opened up a car wash, so, and I don't think they do.
I don't know the answer, but we can check
And
with
how did they get open?
DEP
You know,
to determine whether or not they're currently under some type of compliance letter and need to come in compliance by a certain date,
well,
or.
the one that, I know the one on the highway, that was like a year ago, they had 90 days or something, but they're still there, and
Yeah,
they're
there were
still
like 4.
busting that concrete, so.
Yeah, there were like 4 or 5 of them that popped up over the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, I think, is there only like 2 left now out of those original 4 or 5?
So is that in the DEP's venue then? All right, we probably should, I don't know whether you have our building official, maybe one of our code enforcement officers go around and find that out and then refer them by letter and get it addressed, sooner or later. Otherwise, I feel like we'd be kind of negligent.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Make sure they have the DEP approvals.
Just out of curiosity, can they put that back in our stormwater, in our sewer system, or do you know?
I'm not I think if they can get hooked up to it, that they can.
Okay.
after it's cleaned.
I think they have
I'm
to
not entirely
I mean,
sure.
it's like the ones that, the Love Bugs one and another one on the highway that they had to have either a reuse system or a cleaning system in it, so.
They may have to do something to it before it gets into our system, but they can put it into, I think, our
Sewer?
sanitary sewer system as long as I think they have to perform some treatment to it before it gets.
They could probably send our system into a tailspin if they, some of those chemicals that they use.
Scott, who do you feel like would be the proper city
I'll have-
official to
I'll have-
follow up on this?
I'll have Greg follow up on it. I'll have Greg follow up on it.
Greg?
Our building official.
Okay.
He's right there.
You just got volunteered, huh? Thank you, Greg.
It's just another hat.
Yeah. It's all right, he likes it.
Okay, any further comments or questions from council members? Comments or questions from the public? This is what a public meeting is all about. If you have comments or questions, come on up and tell us who you are and what questions you might have. Okay. All right, and we will adjourn the public hearing.
You want a motion?
Okay, council questions or comments or motions?
Make a motion that we approve ordinance number 1483 on first reading, schedule second and final reading on April 5th, 2022.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Opportunity for council members' questions or comments again. And an opportunity again from the public to any questions or comments about the ordinance that we're about to vote on. Kathy, would you call the roll, please?
Bishop,
Yes.
Carlisle,
Yes.
Bettman,
Yes.
Stewart,
Yes.
Moravance.
Yes. Okay, go to 10B. 10B is going to be a public hearing and ordinance on 1484, a city-initiated request to amend section 1235, 23, 31.1, 26 through 38, 26, 135, 26, 155, 26, 155, and 26, 254 of the Code of Ordinance to address non-conforming mobile home parks and clean up inconsistencies throughout the code as they pertain to mobile home parks. Mr. Swain, would you, let me start the public hearing. Mr. Swain, would you introduce the ordinance, please?
Yes, sir. Ordinance number 1484 is entitled An Ordinance Amending Chapters 12, 23, and 26 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Seabring regarding certain text established in Chapter 12, Article 2, Section 12-35, Mobile Homes Restricted to Parks, Exception, Chapter 23, Article 2, Division 1, Section 23.31.1, Definitions, Chapter 26, Article 2, Division 1, Section 2638, Non-Conforming Uses, Chapter 26, Article 4, Division 2, Section 26-135, Multiple Family Residential Districts, R2, 1 and 2 Family District, R3 Multiple Family District, R3P Multiple Family/Professional District, R4 Multiple Family District, Section 26-155 RV Park District, and Chapter 26, Article 5, Division 3, Section 26-254 Mobile Homes to address non-conforming mobile home park requirements, repealing all ordinances in conflict, providing for severability, providing for conflict, providing for codification, and providing for an effective date.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Swain. Okay, the purpose of the public hearing is to receive public input on an ordinance which will amend the text of the Seabring Code of Ordinance as it pertains to non-conforming mobile home parks. Again, Mrs. Dana Rydell, will you please go over the ordinance with us?
Thank you, Dana Riddell, Senior Planner with the Central Florida Regional Planning Council, for the record. As noted, this ordinance cleans up some of the language regarding mobile home parks, and it addresses non-conforming mobile home parks as council has directed. So to start, I'm going in order of the order of the code. So some of it will seem like cleanup, then we'll go to non-conforming uses, and we'll go back to cleanup. But the code specifically allows in other areas that mobile homes can be sited on R4 lots. But in section 12-35, it said, no mobile home shall be parked at any place or upon any property within the city, except upon a duly licensed and operating mobile home park. Mobile home parks aren't allowed in the R4 district, but just one-off mobile homes are. So we added to that to say, or as permitted in the R4 district, so it wouldn't contradict itself later in the code. Then in definitions, in section 23-31.1, since mobile homes are allowed as one-off developments in the R4 district, we went ahead and added that the definition of residential includes single and multiple family dwellings, including apartment houses, condominiums, cooperative apartment buildings, adult congregate living facilities, mobile homes, and rooming houses. So just added a little bit more for consistency there. And then in section 26-38.1 is where we get into the meat of the non-conforming mobile homes, which I believe the last time that we talked to council was in September of 2021. And since then, we've been working on refining that language and making sure we're bringing forward exactly what the council had directed. So we go ahead and start by specifically stating that mobile home parks that are non-conforming by use, meaning the zoning is incorrect. We basically cannot touch them. They cannot be redesigned, expanded, or modified, and existing mobile homes in these parks shall be prohibited. But,
Replacement of existing.
Replacement.
oh, I'm sorry, I said just
Yes, you
existing.
did.
I apologize. Yes, replacement of existing. What's there can stay. But that doesn't mean that an existing non-conforming mobile home park by use cannot be rezoned to allow the replacement of mobile homes. That's where we get into the next part, section B, where we're talking about non-conformities by design. This is saying the mobile homes are too close together, the streets are too narrow, there's not enough parking. All of these factors are contributing to it being non-conforming by design. Most of the time, if it's not conforming by use, it's probably also not conforming by design. So we're going to say, okay, go ahead and rezone to a planned development. And so we specifically have that language. We say that replacement of existing mobile homes in parks that are legally non-conforming by design may be permitted. And a property owner may apply to rezone to planned unit development to recognize existing conditions and allow for conditions of approval to reduce nonconformities, but also to address unique aspects of existing mobile home parks. So, if a mobile home park is non-conforming by design and someone says, I want to replace my mobile home, but it's only 5 feet apart from the neighboring mobile home, we still can't allow it because it doesn't meet today's code. But if we go through the PUD process, or I'm sorry, in the city it should just say planned development, so I'll have to strike out that word unit. But if we go through the planned development process in the city of Seabring, you can negotiate with the person who owns the park to say, yes, we would allow a 5-foot setback, although we would all strongly advise against that because that doesn't meet building code. That's just an example. It doesn't meet fire code. If there's a fire, everyone goes up in flames, and we definitely don't want that. So we're trying to make sure that we keep it safe, right? But that way we can negotiate and say, all right, I understand your roads aren't wide enough. You don't really have enough room to widen your roads. We'll let that go. But you need to make sure that if your roads aren't wide enough, that people aren't parking on the roads, and that your driveways are wide enough, or that you have enough parking in other locations. So that's where you get that wiggle room to start negotiating. And as conditions of parks being expanded, redesigned, and or modified to reduce or eliminate the nonconformities, an existing conditions survey will be required. This is something that's really important when you're talking about non-conforming by design, because we don't know everything that's non-conforming by design until we see it on paper. So we need a plan showing us the width of the roads, where the structures are located, if they do or don't meet setbacks, density, and if it can meet those requirements. So we'll require an existing condition survey and a site development plan showing the overall density of a park, an area set aside for recreation comprising of 100 square feet per mobile home per site, which are the recreation requirements that are in existence today for mobile home parks. So we're just trying to get them to come closer into conformity. And recreation areas shall not be longer than 2 times its width. You'd be really surprised, some engineers will come up with like a really beautiful, nice long strip of land and say this is recreation, and then we say, but what can you do on it? You have to actually be able to use it passively or one way or another. So no new mobile homes can be placed within 10 feet of any property line. That's a given. And where possible, all development standards of the zoning district have been met or the degree of nonconformity reduced. So again, that's like saying if the roads aren't wide enough, what's the closest we can come to getting them to be a little bit wider or providing for that parking off-street. Submission of expansions and modifications to these parks shall be processed as site development plans, so they'll go through the full-blown site development plan review process. And a design proposal that does not include the addition of new mobile home spaces will not be subject to conditions 2A and 2B above. Rereading that now, I kind of feel
Where's
like
2? That's my question. You're in 2638.1 and then it's AB, AB.
We can switch the AB to ruminant and then
2A
do
and
A's
2B.
where ruminants 1 through 5 are.
Yeah, actually, I feel like that whole lettering is off. See, it's AB here. Yes, we can
That's an
do,
easy fix.
yeah, lowercase a and lowercase b with the Roman numerals. Thank you for catching that, Bob. And as I just noticed it, of course, a lot of times you're in the middle of a presentation. I could look at this a million times, but it's when I'm presenting it that I notice.
Just shows we're paying attention.
Yeah, yeah, you all are. Thank you. And then we have replacement of existing mobile homes in such parks that are non-conforming by design shall be permitted in accordance with the standards of the mobile home park district, which is what I discussed earlier, as long as it meets those other standards like setbacks, height, and minimum living space. You can replace the mobile homes.
Is that, I got a question, because I looked for it, I couldn't find where mobile home park district was in our code. Is that worded?
We have, hold on.
Maybe, I would just, I'm not a code expert, so just had a question of what that was.
You're right. I think we should strike out the word mobile or district and just add mobile homes pursuant to section 26-253, which is where we have the standards for mobile homes.
We have a mobile home park district in 26-156. We can check the sort of the internal citations and definitions and that sort of stuff to make sure it's consistent.
Just couldn't find that mobile home park district.
Yeah,
Do
let me
we
go
have
ahead and
any
make a
that
note.
are mobile home districts right now?
26-156, but I don't think we didn't actually amend the district itself. We amended the non-conforming section of the code, so you might not have seen the mobile home park district as part of it, like an excerpt that you got. But we can also provide that for next hearing.
I saw the RV park district, but then I went to our code to try to, Unicode or what is that thing?
Yeah.
All Florida, so.
I'll double check on that. I think there is, because there's a district and then there's another section of the code that only talks about what's required when you place a mobile home, and that applies to both parks and the R4 district where you can have the one-off mobile homes. But let me go ahead and verify that.
So I think what I'm understanding, you're saying that we may need to add a mobile home district to our
No.
zoning?
Bob, are you trying to pull it up?
We have, in 26-156, we have mobile home park district. That is not part of the package that you're looking at here, because then there were no changes proposed for that, if I'm understanding you correctly, Dana.
Correct.
So there is such a thing as a mobile home park district, but we can certainly go back through here and make sure that the language we use here is consistent with other parts of the code, which I think is the real concern, that we're not referring to something that doesn't exist.
Right, and
We're
then,
calling it by the right name.
then my other question is, do we have any areas that are actually mobile home districts, that are zoned mobile home districts?
Great question. The answer is no.
Yeah, I don't think we know.
Yeah, a lot of them, there's 11 in the city. I believe half of them have been annexed. They retain county zoning, and the other half are non-conforming by use. They do not have the appropriate zoning designation.
Would it be incorrect of me to say that I would have to get a zoning change before I could put a zoning change from some current zoning to mobile home district before I could even put in a new mobile home park?
So in the parks that are non-conforming by use, they won't meet the requirements, so they're gonna have to go to PUD,
Yeah.
which basically means they're gonna have to open up negotiations with the city to see what they're willing to give up and what they're willing to keep.
Right.
The parks that are annexed into the city and retain county zoning, they might meet the requirements, but we have to get that existing condition survey to find out. And so if they do meet the conditions, they could be mobile home park district, or they could go to PUD. But so far, if a new mobile home park comes into the city of Seabring, then they will be using that mobile home park district zoning.
And they would have to get some current zoning changed to that before they could do it, is that correct?
Correct.
Because we have no districts right now.
Right.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
You got it.
Okay.
I'm just making a note. Okay. Okay, thank you for that thoughtful discussion. So, moving on to table 26-135.C. That is our RV park district. And in the RV park district, for some reason, no, I'm sorry, 26, I'm definitely off my game, I'm sorry, okay. In table 26-135.C, that is where we wanted to make sure we added requirements for the minimum living space for mobile homes in the R4 district. So again, we're just going back in and saying, hey, these are allowed in the R4 district. We've been allowing them in the R4 district, and there is a minimum living space requirement. And it's a little bit redundant because in that other section of the code where we talk about mobile home parks, they have a minimum square footage requirement of 800 square feet, but we're just going back in and making sure it's written out as a permitted use in the R4 district.
Okay, can I stop you for just a second on that?
Yes.
Thought we had some discussion on that minimum of 800 square feet to possibly include tiny houses or park models that are much smaller than that. Didn't we have quite a bit of discussion at one of our workshops on
We did.
reducing that number?
And we determined to leave it like this for now.
Did we?
Yes.
Okay.
I suspect that's coming
That-
back though, Charlie.
That's not even a single wide, just, a single wide's usually about 12 by 60. That's 720 square feet, so
12 by
you've
40.
got to have a double wide or more, or a very long single wide. Just to call y'all's attention.
Well, when we discussed this, didn't you say this was the standard?
This is the standard. And a lot of the discussion was about the minimum lot size, not necessarily the minimum living space of the structure. But based on the one meeting we had, there was a lot of discussion about tiny home districts, and I created a whole tiny home district for the city of Sebring. So when you are ready, we can go back into it.
Good deal.
But for right
It's
now,
definitely coming.
yeah, I'm ready for it.
Well, again, though, on the 800 square feet, if they want to replace an existing single wide, which most of our mobile home parks out there have existing single wide mobile homes, they can't do it with that 800 feet.
So that has to be a common occurrence.
I think, hold on.
Some of the older mobile homes are probably less than that.
Oh, yeah. All of them are.
A lot of them.
Most all of them are.
Yeah.
So they're not gonna get replaced, which is what I thought we were trying to do here, was encourage replacement of the older mobile homes with newer ones. And they're not gonna be able to replace all those single wides.
Keep in mind, yeah, that's true. The 800-foot standard applies to all mobile homes, but in this particular area, we're only adding it to the R4 district where they have to have a minimum lot size of 6,500 square feet because it would be those one-off lots, not in a park. And so that's a really sizable lot.
But
For
that
that
also applies
800.
to the mobile home parks, doesn't it?
Yeah, yes.
So you
it still
can't
does.
replace any of these, which I thought was the whole reason we were trying to do the ordinance, unless you go to a PUD. And then I presume you possibly can.
Well, that's when they come in and they negotiate with us. And that would accomplish the same thing.
That's true. During the PUD process, we can decrease the size of the minimum
Right.
living space.
Okay. There is an avenue to get it done then.
Yes.
Okay.
So again, in that same table, yeah, it's on the next slide a little further down.
What page is that? Do you have it, your page number?
There's no page numbers.
Living area underscored in red at the very top.
It looks like I don't have page numbers this time.
Shame on
Not quite
you.
half.
I will never forget it again.
Code numbers.
It's the second page of the, second, third page of the table, it looks like.
It's got some red number,
Talking about
red
where it says
letters.
living.
I got it, thank you.
Which is living area?
You're talking about living area mobile
That's
homes.
the one we just been talking about.
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
So, and we'll go back and take a look at this, but I'm showing average size of mobile homes is bigger than a 12 by 60. It's anywhere from 14 to 16.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Could you
I'm
speak up?
showing the average size of a mobile, single-wide mobile home is bigger than a 12 by 60, according to what I'm reading online.
Yeah, they're usually
It's
14
14 to
feet wide.
16 wide to 66 to 80 to 8 feet.
It used to be 12 by 60, but okay.
Yeah, well.
Well, it doesn't matter, because we can negotiate.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Some people's going bigger, some people's going littler.
Sorry. Okay, yeah, no, but I do believe that, so in the county, the minimum living space for mobile homes is 480 square feet. So a lot of them are going to be non-conforming by design and will require a zoning change to PUD. And we'll get that existing condition survey.
So the county is 480 and we're at 800. Okay.
Correct.
That's a big difference.
It's huge.
I don't remember, I can't even believe that.
So is our 800 square feet, does that stem from what our minimum size was for a living space,
Ye-
like an apartment or something of
Well,
that
I
nature?
think R1's, I think the minimum for R1's 800.
That's,
Well, I could see on a single-family lot doing the 800, but when you move to a mobile home park, keeping it at 800, it seems pretty high, and again, the county's at 480.
But again, we can negotiate that.
You can, but every time you negotiate, and you guys know this, a lot of people don't want to come in front of council, they'll just do nothing. Or, you know, depending on the council, they'll just say, no, we'll leave it the way it is. So, I think our intent on this was to try to clean up some of our mobile home parks.
Absolutely.
So,
So does council agree that you'd like to have a smaller living space requirement, or?
I would certainly be in favor of that, even if it's, you know, a little bit smaller. Maybe not go all the way down to the county level, but maybe 600 feet, which would at least allow them to maybe come in with a park model, which I think is about 10 by 60.
Well, we can't do park models because that would be like an RV.
It's different.
Okay, well, let me take back my terminology then.
So,
That's the problem.
Why don't we-
Yeah.
let me, Greg, can I ask you a question about the standards or the wind code standards of mobile homes, and at what year or date do they have to, and you may not know the answer to
He's
this,
not gonna
but
have
from
that in
a
his brain.
state
So that is a proverbial can of worms. So mobile and modular homes are governed by a separate code than the Florida Building Code. They come with a manufacturer stamp and seal, and so long as they're compliant and in the original condition in which they were delivered, they're capable of being left intact. When you go to modify a mobile home, that's a big can of worms. There's no simple, straightforward answer. If they were to modify it to the point where it would require a building permit, it would need to meet the current wind codes, which depending on the proximity to Lake Jackson or Dinner Lake is 139 mile an hour exposure C or D.
So I've got section 26-254 up, and it shows, due to the lack of comprehensive implementation of federal building and safety standards for transportable structures manufactured in homes prior to June 15th, 1976, no such mobile home shall be permitted in any zoning district of the city. Is that the
Sounds
magic?
good to me.
Is that the magic number? So if we knew what the single wide size was in 76, that may be a frame of reference for what we could utilize for our code, if you will. Even though we know or acknowledge that we have plenty of mobile homes that are here prior to 76.
Yeah, there's some
In,
probably 50s.
in some, at least
Well-
2 or 3 of the old mobile
Yeah,
home parks.
as long as there's no change in the mobile home park, we're not gonna mess with those.
Yeah, but they're not gonna be allowed to bring in new mobile
That's
homes
correct,
unless we go
without
through
changing.
the process, correct?
Part of the challenge is what we ran into on Bayview, which that mobile home still has not been finalized, in that, you know, the city code calls for a size for size, you know, like for like exchange. Problem is current code requires, I believe it's a 36-inch ground clearance from the bottom of the frame to the ground level, so they sit 2.5 feet higher than what the existing mobile homes do, and it sticks out like a sore thumb.
That's a whole nother discussion.
It's a big, the whole thing's a big can of worms.
Yeah.
Greg, is that because they can't get all the piping, you know, and the plumbing and under it, or?
I don't know what the nexus is behind that decision. My suspicion is it's to provide crawl space and serviceability because most of the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing occurs under a mobile home or a modular home.
I mean, if there's a clearance, I mean, all they have to do is take one course of block down and they're good, or close to it.
Sure. Well, again, it boils down to serviceability.
Yep.
So that wouldn't really be a zoning issue, though. That'd be a building department issue.
Yep.
Correct.
But the existing building code for mobile homes out there indicates they gotta be 36 inches off the ground?
That's my understanding, is that the current code is that they have to be 30 sides.
That's
It's either
3 feet?
they're high. And the reason being, and maybe it's finished floor elevations to 36 inches, but the reason being is that the access to the guts of the mobile home,
Yeah.
mainly sanitary, lines are all below the floor, so it's similar to a house that's on a stem wall,
Right.
or crawl space, not a stem wall.
Okay, so just forget everything you said, because we're not talking about that.
Right.
Okay.
It's all by way of
So-
background.
Well, yeah, it's background. So the question is the square footage.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that what our conversation previously was to try to adjust to the standards in the state of Florida. And I think that's where we came up with that square footage.
Yeah, and if
But
you-
I had no idea that the city, I mean, the counties was 480, whatever.
Yeah,
That's small.
It's really small.
that's tiny, yeah. And
They
actually-
can when they change, we can negotiate this stuff.
Well, I think it's how we left it, but
Yeah, but I'm just saying, when they come in to do a PUD and stuff, she said we can negotiate lot sizes,
Yeah.
mobile home size.
R4 has an 800 square foot minimum living area. So
That's for homes too, right?
for anything that may be in R4.
Right.
So you would have a.
And that's
you
what
know,
we're discussing now, is the R4.
mhm.
Well, it's R4, but also the other.
Mobile homes wherever else they may
everywhere.
be.
Right. So
So-
the R4, I got no problem with leaving at the 800, but on a mobile home park, if we want these people to come in and clean these up, I think we're gonna have a hard time with that 800, because it's one person doing it
I,
has to come before council.
So I-
And then you have to get a PUD for the whole park.
I can appreciate what you're saying, Charlie,
Yeah.
but the non-compliant parks now, the issues in those parks are way more than just the size of the unit.
They are, but this
They're
is.
the driveways, the lack of
No
driveways,
parking.
the roads, the turnaround for fire, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't think it's gonna happen at all. I think they're gonna have to keep them the way they are, or not.
Yeah.
Or, you know, reduce the number of units substantially. Don't you think that's real?
Well,
Yeah.
no, I think that if you got a single wide mobile home that's 720 square feet right now, and you want to replace that old one, and we make that at 600 square feet, one person that owns that, or the park manager or whoever owner, can replace one unit without having to do a whole PUD. Because as soon as he goes into a PUD, you got a whole process that's gonna cost him thousands of dollars to
Yeah.
get this whole thing redeveloped. So that won't happen one at a time. It'll either happen the whole thing or not at all. But if we do it one at a time, we may upgrade some of these parks one at a time, one unit at a time.
But we're not, some of these parks, we don't want them to pull one out and put one in.
Right.
Why not?
Huh?
It's gonna
Because
upgrade
there's
the
no
park.
parking. I mean, there's no place for a fire truck to get down because there's no parking. So if there's a fire truck can't get down because they're parked on the road. So what we wanted them to do is pull two out and put one in with parking.
Right.
Okay, whatever y'all wanna do.
Well, you know, back in the 70s, looking back on this, a 14-foot wide mobile home was kind of the standard. They still had some 12s, but 14 was kind of the standard. 50-foot length and 60-foot length were probably right there in the ballpark. So you're anywhere between 700 square feet and 840. So, I mean, to give a little bit of leeway, you might want to drop it to 700, otherwise leave it at 800, I'm good with that.
I still say we can negotiate.
Well, I really don't have a problem about dropping it to 700, particularly because we will be talking about small homes. And we intend them to be smaller than that.
Right. Well, a 14 by 50 is 700.
Yeah.
So,
Well, let's not have the misconception that the 700 square feet is the magic number either, because they're probably not gonna meet setbacks. So
Right.
they gotta go through the PD process regardless.
regardless, I think, yeah.
So no matter if they replace it, they have to conform to existing standards.
Well, I mean, that's how I'm reading this
That's-
code,
that's-
as how it's proposed.
Yeah.
So, just because they get to 700 square feet doesn't mean that they can come in and replace the mobile home, because they're not gonna meet some of the other conditions
Okay.
in
So change the
this.
100
That's the
feet,
way I'm
we'll
reading
do
it. Would that be correct?
Correct.
Okay, so that makes sense, and that's probably why we left it that way, Charlie.
That's fine.
Okay, let's move on.
I was just looking, at one point we had a chart with the regular size of the mobile homes. But
Maybe
we're
the
moving
solution
on.
for these parks is maybe that tiny home concept, I don't know.
Yeah.
Right?
what?
Maybe the solution for these parks is that tiny home concept,
Mhm.
right?
She says she's ready for that.
That's another conversation.
They go.
That
in
way
the-
you end up with new homes,
Yes.
Right.
right?
Right.
That may be able to fit within the boundary of this park.
So I don't think we're ready to even talk about that right now.
Correct.
Yeah,
I'm
that's-
just, but
that's in the
that may
RV.
be the solution to some of these
Yeah.
non-conforming parks that are gonna be difficult to get to conforming. Or we won't ever get to conforming.
Thank you. Okay, so this is where I left paused off earlier, table 26-135.c, my second slide there. Panicked for a moment because I worried that we put the R4 minimum lot size requirement under R3P, which it looks that way on my slide, but in the packet, it's accurate. It's under R4.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. So sometimes there's a little copy and paste error, but that's just to say that if you put a mobile home in the R4 district as a one-off, it needs to meet the minimum lot size requirements for the R4 district, and we're applying the same minimum lot size requirements to mobile homes in the R4 district as we do for single-family residences in the R4 district. Then we go ahead into section 26-253, where we discuss mobile homes. And this is the general requirements for mobile homes, not the mobile home park district, but general requirements. And it lists what districts mobile home parks are allowed, or where mobile homes are allowed. And we added PD for the planned development district, because we just added that to our code just now in conjunction with the rest of these changes. So the past action on March 8th was that the Planning and Zoning Board voted 6-1 to forward the text amendments with the recommendation of approval. And I will turn it back over to Councilman Lawrence to end the public hearing.
Okay, thank you very much, Dana.
Can I make a, Dana, while you're there, I mean, if we're gonna kind of clean this up a little bit, if you go back to 26-38, on B, the end of B, it's just, I don't have a .1 or anything, it just says 2638 dot.
Non-conforming use.
You don't have a .1?
It's got nothing about 2638
I
dot.
got a point.
So it's right before that, it's right before that.
The non-conforming.
23.
Yeah.
Non-conforming uses.
existing.
I'm gonna go back to what you haven't covered.
Okay.
And on there, just some cleanup stuff on part B, the last sentence says, such non-conforming use of land shall be discontinued and all materially completed, removed by its owner not later than 3 years from February 15, 1944. Do we still need that in there?
I think we missed that date.
You're in section 26-38, not .1.
Right, non-conforming.
Which is not anything you touched.
It's nothing, I just
Yeah.
noticed this and I thought, maybe we're past 3 years, 1947.
Right.
Before we were all born.
That's like when Leonard was born, I think.
Yeah, Leonard, yeah, Leonard.
He's not gonna be the oldest, but he's.
I was gonna say
Actually-
Terry, but she's not up here yet. But
Whoa.
She's coming, won't be long.
Menard's 49.
We can remove it, but what I've found is that sometimes with those dates, Bob,
Oh,
what are your thoughts?
no, go ahead, please.
Okay. Sometimes with those dates, it gives us good landmark dates or landmark times. So I think around 1944 is when
I'm fine. I
this
just think
city was platted.
if we're cleaning stuff up, but then if you go to
We can.
F, it also says in residential zones where lots areas are large enough, a guest house or servants' quarters may be constructed. I think we're probably past the servants'
Servants'
quarters.
quarters?
Yep.
Now, Mark has one, but nobody else does.
Right,
Yeah.
I do.
I'm
She's my
just-
boss.
That's where he lives.
I was gonna say, that's where he lives.
And I will look into the 1944 date.
I would leave that. It sounds ridiculous, but if you
Okay.
find something that's not allowed, what they always argue is what's always been this way, or I bought it like this.
Right.
And the neighbor tells me it's been here forever and ever and it's not been a problem. Leave me alone. And
Okay.
I can hear that person saying that.
Yeah.
Got one other question, and this may go the same way as the rest of them, but it just seems to be conflicting on 26-254, which is the last 2 pages we have. And this may stay the same. I think it just kind of contradicts. It says under A2, structures manufactured prior to June 15th, 1976, no such mobile home shall be permitted in any zoning district in the city. And then if you go to the last page under C6, it says a mobile home should not be relocated within the city after 7 years from its date of manufacture. So
Those are good building code dates. Greg could probably, if we were to
Just wanna- I
lure
mean,
him
if
up
you're
here
gonna
one more
leave it, I
time.
just-
That's like
make
a
sense
general
anymore.
standard that, because people will come in and they'll have a mobile home from 1974 and say, yeah, I want to move it from this other county to here. So that's why that date is in there, just to say that no mobile home built before 1976 can be in there. And
But
then,
it says, the last one, it kind of
Right.
tightens it up to says anything over 7 years, so.
oh, that's
What
true.
I'm saying is, you
More
know,
restrictive.
one date that says 76, but then the last date says nothing older than 7 years.
I like that.
Bob,
one.
can
I
we-
would leave it because sometimes we find that people don't ask whether they can move in this mobile home. You just see it there all of a sudden. And they'll say, no, that one's been here. It's 1974, but it's been here. It's allowed, and it's not been relocated under that 7-year thing. So I'd keep it that way. You know, if it's pre-1976, it's not allowed. You know, it's out of here.
So,
Just doesn't
so
make
does
sense
this
to me,
mean,
but-
does this mean that if we had a mobile
Well, it's
home
always been, John.
that was manufactured in 2000, right? So I'm referring to number 6. And it's somewhere else within the city, can it be relocated somewhere else in the
It
city?
can't be moved in
It
the
says
city
no.
from A to B.
Cannot be relocated, period. It can't be moved into the city from within or without.
Yes, sir.
Right. Outside.
Well, generally, when mobile homes get old, they don't do well moving. They fall apart.
So that essentially means that you can't locate a mobile home that is any older than 2015-ish
Mhm.
into the city.
I'm not supposed to, but it happens.
That would be more stringent than the county.
And we can do that legally. Right?
What did you just say?
Just that would be more stringent than the county, because the county doesn't have the 7-year limitation. They have the 1976 rule.
That's why it looks the way it does.
Man, some of them, we want one of them moved in beside me.
Well, like I said, they don't move those.
You're
They
right.
just
Actually
duct tape
moving
those in
one that
place.
old?
They try.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
No, sir.
Any other questions or comments from the public in regards to our public meeting? This is still a public meeting. And the purpose of the public meeting is for you to express your concerns or questions. Nothing else? Okay, we will adjourn the public meeting. And now we will go to council's questions or comments in regards to this, or motions.
With the motion, we need to say with changes, Bob?
As presented or as discussed.
Okay.
What did you say?
He's going to move approval subject to the changes that have been discussed here today.
Got that? Okay, I make a motion that we approve 1484 on first reading, however he's, with changes as discussed, and schedule the second and final reading on April the 5th.
Have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any further comments or questions from council members? Comments or questions from the public? Okay, Kathy, would you call the roll, please?
Bishop,
Yes.
Carlisle,
Yes.
Bettman,
Yes.
Stewart,
Yes.
Lawrence.
No. Okay, we'll go on to 10C. 10C is a CRA redevelopment master plan update. Introduction of the ordinance 1497, Mr. Swain.
For your consideration, ordinance number 1497 is entitled, "An Ordinance of the City of Seabring Adopting the Community Redevelopment Plan Update for the Seabring Community Redevelopment Area pursuant to the Community Redevelopment Act of 1969, Chapter 163, Part 3, for statutes, and providing for an effective date."
Okay, thank you, Mr. Swain. Staff report, Mr. John Jones.
Good evening, Chairman Lawrence, Mayor Shoup, members of the council, my name's John Jones with SNME 1615 Edgewater Drive, Orlando, Florida. Tonight, I'm here to introduce the CRA plan and respectfully request your consideration for adoption of the ordinance that will authorize the use of the new plan and the new time frame for the plan. I'd like to thank Scott, David, Christie, and the CRA board for their participation and input in the preparation of the plan. The plan was developed utilizing extensive public engagement, including an online website and survey instrument, a day-long community workshop, and individual stakeholder interviews. So right now, if we could queue up the presentation, and I'll ask you to advance it. Yes. And 3, 2, 1, there we go. All right. All right, next slide, please. Let's see if I can twist around a little bit. All right, that's SNME. We're a multidisciplinary firm located out of Raleigh, North Carolina. I am seated in Orlando, Florida. We also have a Tampa office as well. Next slide, please. All right, so the overview of the plan. Next slide, please. Satisfies the Florida statute requirements governed by Chapter 163, Part 3, including 163-360, contents of community redevelopment plans, the area of the plan, and notification of the taxing authorities. 163-361, the modification of the CRA plan regulating contents and the review and approval process, and 163-362, addressing contents and required contents of the CRA plan. Next slide, please. This shows you the public engagement that was utilized for the development of the plan. It included stakeholder interviews with community leaders and business owners and city staff. Also included online input with a public survey and a website where people could go and get information and leave their comments. And also a map markup there, a GIS map where people could leave comments and look at other folks' comments. And then a day-long walk-in workshop where people could walk in and leave their comments and input and leave their comments on a base map regarding what they would like to see in the CRA. Next slide, please. The table of contents, that's almost illegible there. Suffice to say, on the left-hand side, it contains the goals and objectives of the CRA. In the middle, it contains the existing conditions in the background, and in the middle column at the top, it contains the financing. The far left column is your legal description and your neighborhood impact statement. So the next part we're going to talk about is the action strategies. There were 5 primary action strategies identified: enhancing the local economy, retaining small town charm, establishing and reinforcing connections, improving the existing housing stock, accessibility and availability of housing, and supporting waterfront redevelopment and entertainment opportunities. We're going to dive into each one of these overall strategies and talk about some of the tasks and policies associated with each one. For enhancing the local economy, next slide, please. There we go. All right. For enhancing the local economy, some of the tasks and strategies included marketing redevelopment opportunity sites that have been located in the downtown area, downtown merchants coordination, creating business development, recruitment, and support programming to grow businesses in the downtown, marketing and the reuse of CRA-owned facilities and buildings and sites in the downtown, and also small business and startup business support and programming. As part of retaining the small town charm, the policies and programs included, next slide please. Whoop, there we go. Reinforcing the theme and branding of the downtown area and the CRA area through signage, gateways, and streetscapes, supporting community-oriented policing programs within the CRA, enhancing neighborhoods, open spaces, and green spaces, and updating the land development regulations, as you're doing here tonight, to support historic development patterns and building appearances in the downtown. With regards to the redevelopment strategy of establishing and reinforcing connections, some of the policies and programs include, next slide please. There we go. Streetscape improvements and refreshing the existing streetscape improvements that you've made, improving the pedestrian amenities, sidewalks, trails, and paths, providing varied traffic options and parking options, varied parking options, and connecting your cultural and recreational destinations throughout the CRA. With regards to improving housing stock, accessibility, and availability, the proposed programs and tasks include, thank you, creating an inventory of vacant residential parcels for development and sharing with the housing development community, providing home fix-up grants and home improvement grants, partnering with local banks to provide loan assistance, marketing, and sales, and the demolition of unsafe structures. With regards to supporting the waterfront redevelopment and entertainment opportunity strategies, the tasks and policies include the implementation of the waterfront master plan, supporting park and recreation development in waterfront area, supporting public arts, arts and entertainment districts, and also arts incubators, and supporting event programming in the CRA that induces and encourages private sector investment in the CRA. The next section we're going to look at is the conceptual master plan. The conceptual master plan, there you go, it shows the location of the capital improvements in the CRA. It's kind of like your campaign map. It shows your capital improvement locations, the opportunity sites that were identified in the downtown, the gateways, and the intersection improvements that are proposed. Next slide, please. These are the goals, objectives, and policies. These address the day-to-day administration of the CRA and are meant to complement the redevelopment strategies that were identified previously. These address the topics of administration, housing, community and culture, economic development, public spaces, infrastructure, public health and safety, and the regulatory environment. Tax increment fund projections. The table that you see there shows the potential tax increment revenue projections for the downtown area, that was your original CRA area, and then your 3 subsequent expansion areas that you created. Those subsequent expansion areas have a different base year than your initial CRA area, so you have to generate, or you have to calculate, pardon me, your TIF revenue using that different base year. And so you can see that the cumulative TIF revenue, if the CRA is extended through its maximum operational time frame of 2043, is a little over $32 million. That's with a contribution of approximately $19 million from the county and approximately $13 million from the city. The next adoption cycle dates, key dates, we did the CRA meeting last night. The CRA provided approved a resolution to adopt the plan. Tonight is the first reading of the local ordinance to adopt the plan and also extend the operational time frame. And then on April 5th will be the second reading of that same ordinance. At this time, I'd like to open it up for any questions or comments.
Questions from council members? Mr. Depp?
No, sir?
Mr. Bishop?
No, sir.
Mr. Stewart?
What's the time frame?
2043.
Okay.
Mr. Carlisle?
Nope, it's pretty plain.
Okay. The only question I have is you have that possible TIF at 32 million.
Yes, sir.
Is there any chance that that might be higher?
Yes, sir. It was projected utilizing a 1.5% increase in property valuation for the year 2021, 2020-2021, and then subsequent property valuation increases or appreciation at about 2.5%, exactly 2.5%.
Okay.
So if it goes up faster, you'll have increased TIF. If it doesn't increase at that rate, you'll have decreased TIF. So this is your general average for about the past 20 years or so.
If we take an accessory property, if they construct a building on that, is their base value the 110,000 or whatever today's value is? And then the TIF dollars are figured on the construction value? Or do they reset that at the value and then go from there? Understand what I'm asking?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's at today's value.
The value of the Nanseswi project, if it was included in your original CRA area,
Right.
that would be your value.
So if it was 110,000, they put $20 million project.
Correct. It'll be based on the
So that'll add to the
1981
TIF.
value.
Right.
So after 1981, whatever that increment is. So the most recent sale probably already bumped that increment up.
Yeah. So.
And any development that we have in the city of CRA would be any improvement to that. So.
Right, and that would be a good reason for us to do those CRA developments early rather than later, because that number would grow much greater. If you wait till the last year, you only get 1 year of that TIF money, whereas if you do it this year or next year, then you get 20 years of TIF money.
Correct.
Which can increase that significantly, as well as large projects.
Correct. The majority of your TIF revenue growth you'll see will be at the end of the lifespan of the operational time frame.
Yeah.
That's when you see the highest revenue growth.
Okay. So So I know a lot of people have wondered where the CRA is getting their money, and maybe this can explain it a little bit. It's that TIF money, the difference in that. And it's projected to be quite a bit of money over time, and that projection may be short. This year alone, they say housing is going up 20%. That's huge.
Well, also in addition to that, since we pay county taxes, isn't it nice if they're giving some back?
It is. Okay, any other questions from council?
I mean, there's a lot of data in here, and I mean, some work that's been put into this. As far as the budget, you know, there's some items that probably aren't in there that should be in there.
Yes, sir.
How often does that have to be updated? Is that an annual update?
So
or-
the item that you see in this document is a budget worksheet. And
Right.
so that's to assist the CRA putting together their annual work plans. So to answer your question, every year they'll present an annual work plan for you to give a thumbs up or a thumbs down to.
So any new projects or anything
Will be
probably the
presented
next
to you
year.
in this
So,
coming
but
budget.
This has been working on for quite a while, I understand.
Yes, sir.
So anything new, I mean, waterfront wise, and that'll be into the next year's plan.
Yes, sir. That'll be in next or this coming year's annual work plan.
Okay.
Okay. Any comments or, oh, I'm sorry.
A lot of work.
Yep. Any comments or questions from the public? Come on up. Tell us who you are and what questions you may have and for who.
Name is Tom Mendel, and I have reviewed the master plan. I'm pretty familiar with master planning. I'm currently working on a $500 million master plan for a private company. Master planning, when you look at it, you want to make it as accurate as you can make it. If it isn't, there's no reason to do a master plan. And the next 5 years, you can't look out to 2043. No one has a crystal ball that can look out that far. But you can look out for the next 5 years at a pretty reasonable intelligence and understanding what's going on. They've used 2.5% as an average escalation or inflation factor in here. Inflation last year was 7%. Inflation this year is 7% for the first 2 months. You ought to look at the next 5 years and use reasonable inflation, because your plan's going to be light. And if the numbers don't mean anything, why put them in here? Why spend the money to do this kind of a plan if you're not going to use accurate information to the best of your knowledge? Things change. Understand things change. But you still want to make the plan as accurate as you can make it with the knowledge that you have. So I think that's one point. Another point is there's things in here that have zero inflation over the next 5 years. They have exactly the same number. That's not reasonable. Your operating expenses for insurance, same number, essentially the same number. There's just so many of them that's the same number. You ought to use inflation to increase those numbers for the next 5 years. Beyond 5 years, I have no problem with seeing 2.5%. But for the next 5 years, you ought to use more accurate numbers. And this point with that this is a changing plan, understand it's a changing plan, but you just approved a $6.8 million budget for a waterfront project, and it's not in the plan. That was approved over 2 weeks ago. You had plenty of time to get those numbers in this plan. Besides that, the $6.8 million is only for phase 1. I understand from Mr. Lydell that he's planning to go full stream ahead for the next phases. So why isn't the remaining phases cost in here? Now you might say, well, I don't know what the cost of those is. Well, you have an estimate. He used that estimate to come up with the $6.8 million. He can use that estimate to come up with the future phase cost. There's no reason why you can't. I think you're making a disservice to this plan if you don't put the largest project by millions of dollars into the next 5 years that you know about. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mendel. Any other comments or thoughts from the public?
Hello, I'm James Dean. I'm a citizen of Seabring. You mentioned retaining small-town charm. I say that the CRA has failed to retain small-town charm, and the waterfront master plan, CRA hired the wrong consultant. The Kimley Horn has created a clone of Fort Lauderdale. It is the mistake on the lake. It seems here that the only goal of CRA seems to be to increase the TIF money, of which CRA gets a percentage. I'm stating that the CRA and the city should lay the Kimley Horn plans on the shelf. They should hire an historical consultant. An entirely new plan should be done, and it should be done before the master plan is done. I'm not an expert on this, but if you look at this area, there are two possible consultants. One wrote Seabring, the city on the circle. I understand that man is now a consultant, an historical consultant in Rhode Island. There's a firm for you. And one of the best examples would be the consultant that was hired both by Amtrak and by the contractor to make the Seabring train station handicap accessible, which obviously the CRA doesn't seem to be concerned with when they've blocked off the parking and removed handicap parking at the waterfront. So my suggestion is, before doing a master plan, I think the plans for the mistake on the lake should be put on the shelf, and the proper historical consultant should be hired, and CRA should pay for that.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments or concerns from the public? Okay. Anyone like to make a motion?
I would like to say something. I think it's probably appropriate to have the finances for the waterfront that we approved in this plan. I don't understand why they're not. Do you want to address that, please?
Hey, good afternoon. David Liddell, Chair of the Seabring CRA. The master plan is a broad-based general plan. We don't want to be hamstrung by saying that is included in the plan. We want the flexibility to be able to come to you and ask for your approval based on projects and not lock ourselves in. It's also pretty tough right now to estimate construction costs and whatnot. Locking it into what is probably our last master plan did not seem like the right idea to us.
That makes no sense to me. If we've approved
It's the project.
$6-point-some million project, and hasn't happened yet, and we're talking about the future, that number should be in here, in my estimation. If you had a business, you would do that for any business. So I'm just puzzled. I don't understand
The
that.
plan is more project geared.
Yeah, this is a project, though.
Right, so we've identified it as a project in the plan.
Right.
And then we come to you for the specific approval of the budget.
Okay, I thought we approved a budget.
You did.
So, when you're figuring your finances for the next however many years, that number should be designated.
So
I mean, am I making sense? To me, it makes sense.
I don't believe that that's the intention of the master plan.
Okay, am I missing something? Because I don't get
The
it.
master plan is intended to be a general document that guides the direction of the CRA.
Right.
So it identifies target areas, general functions, but it's the annual development of our budget and individual planning for that that's
Right.
there.
Yeah.
This plan needs to dictate what we are allowed to do, and then give us the authority to go forward as a needs-based plan. And it's my understanding that we're here tonight to ask for council's approval of the extension of time because of the TIF dollars.
Yeah.
And the CRA is supposed to approve what
Right.
their master plan is.
Well, I'm on board for that, most definitely. But this seems silly, for lack of a better term, to not have that very large outlay of funds allotted within, when we're talking about money, we're talking about $32 million over a period of time, and we've spent 6.5 of that. Doesn't make sense to me. Am I the only one thinking this?
No?
mean, I would think that that should be in here. It's not.
But then if you change the numbers later on,
Well-
amending the plan becomes a problem.
Right.
It's better to take it on a project-by-project basis.
Well, but this is something.
Because
we've
what's the significance of it being in the plan? I don't think I understand
because we've
that.
already approved these dollars to be spent.
Right.
So it is in the budget.
But you don't have our budget in here. Our budget's developed annually.
You've already spent the money. I mean, the money has been allotted.
Correct.
So that's a debit to your budget, and you're not showing that. And that's a simple
Well-
thing to do, and I don't know why you're even arguing with me. I mean,
The other part of it is, part of that funding is dependent upon a loan that has yet to be approved as well. So the dollars don't even exist.
Yeah. Right.
If I could interject,
Yep, come on up.
the inclusion of the funding for the Waterfront redevelopment project has been allocated to the city's budget. It has not been identified yet in the CRA's annual work plan.
Okay, what does that mean?
That means that the city council has said, we're gonna allocate this amount of money for this project.
Well, we're not. We're allowing them, the CRA, to spend that money.
Very good. The CRA has not made the formal decision yet to include that project in their annual work plan and move that forward. This plan says they will support waterfront redevelopment and they will include it in future work plans. But the synchronization of your approval, this plan, and then their approval of an annual work plan that includes the waterfront project is not in sequence.
So what you're saying is we're putting the cart before the horse by having that interjected in there
Yes,
until
sir.
their budget is formalized?
Yes, sir.
Okay. While we're on this topic, the 2.5%, where did you come up with that? I mean.
That was over a 20-year period. It was an average of a 20-year period.
Okay. Guess it sure doesn't reflect what's going down now.
Understood, understood.
We're hoping
Yes,
that's
sir.
gonna change.
Well, I wish it would.
But when you talk about the consumer inflation rates that are being kind of discussed, real estate is not a component of that. You know, CPI is the federal government's way of measuring inflation. Real estate is not there. Historically, real estate has appreciated about 4%. Florida might be a little higher, but it's 4%. So this gives us more of a guide to say, in 10 years, where could TIF dollars possibly be? Because there's also a difference between running a straight rate of return like this and sequence of returns. So an average is 7% this year, 1% next year. We've had years where we have seen our funding go down. So it's going to fluctuate. This is just merely a guide that tells us, okay, you might be able to plan for a bigger project 10 to 15 years out.
Lots of squiggly lines, in other words.
Absolutely.
Okay. I get it.
I mean, I'll give you the analogy I used last night. If I'm in my kitchen and my butt's on the stove and my head's in the freezer, my average temperature is just about right.
Did you think about that ahead of time?
Nope, I
just
stole
in
it from
case?
somebody else.
The county and city millage, though, also could vary, right? I mean, that's this is all based upon today's current county and city millage. Those may change.
Okay.
So I'm not sure that you can create a chart that would
Right.
accurately reflect what will happen,
Yeah.
to be quite honest,
I agree.
from a revenue perspective.
Yeah.
Because
This
we've
is
got
a
variables
big
that
swag.
are out of our control.
Maybe, I think there's some confusion, because I read through the same thing, and I talked to David about some of this, and then I went back through it, and maybe you can kind of clarify what this document is used for, or why we're having this document, because in the, on page 67 where it starts the budget,
Yeah.
there's a line that says, this budget worksheet and proposed long-term implementation schedule is to be used by the CRA as a resource when preparing their annual budget documents and work plans.
Okay.
So, I mean, are we looking at this document was done 20 years ago, correct?
The
There was a
original document,
The
yes, sir.
original document was done
Right.
20 years ago.
Yes, sir.
So, because the TIF funding is sunsetted, or was proposed to be sunsetted, I believe, this year or next year.
Yes, sir.
They extended it till another 20 years.
Yes, sir.
Now you had to prepare another 20-year document, basically as a guide
Correct.
That's all.
Not as the budget. I think we're.
Correct.
And I agree. I think this, the big thing with the Waterfronts thing did come up. And that's a question that I had for David, is to say, hey, what's it in there? And this is kind of where I had to go back through this and read it, and really what this document does, and then that we approve on an annual basis the budget and expenditures that they have.
Correct.
And that's where, I know anybody that does business and budgets, I mean, I'd budget everything in here that I could for as long as I could. And we do a 3-year or 5-year budget, because after 5 years, you're toast anyway. It
Correct.
changes. But
Correct.
this document is every 20-year document.
Correct. Mayor Shoup, you're hitting on the finer points of redevelopment planning, and that is, you can only spend tax increment funds on projects, programs, or strategies that are identified in your plan. And that's what the Florida statutes require, because they don't want this to be used as a slush fund for city projects or programs that would otherwise be addressed by the general fund. It can only be for projects or programs identified in this plan. And so you try to cast as wide a net as possible to allow the CRA to pick and choose from the opportunities at hand from the projects in here. And then they bring that annual work plan to you, so you guys can approve it and say, yep, this makes sense, it's in the plan, you can utilize the TIF funds for it. With regards to the budget worksheet, that budget worksheet is there to show what the next 5 years' budget is from the city. That's a 5-year budget that the city provided us. And then we start plugging in some of the proposed programs to demonstrate, all right, based on your 5-year projection of TIF revenue, the 5-year projects that you've already identified, and the proposed new capital projects, this is how much money you're gonna need to do it. This is where your gaps are. This is where your shortfall is. So that's what that budget worksheet does. It doesn't say, this is how you're gonna do it for the next 43 years. It says, if you spend this project here, this project here, this project here, you're gonna need more money. And it tells you exactly what that shortfall is. So it's a budget tool so that you can go through the menu and say, all right, 2022, we have this many projects identified, we have this much TIF revenue, it's a shortfall. We're not gonna have enough money.
Yeah.
We can A, either get more funding, or B, cross a project off the list. We're not gonna do it this year, or push it down the schedule. That's how the worksheet is to be used. And then the CRA will bring that annual work plan to you each year for approval. But this is the big guidebook, so to speak, the roadmap.
And this document must exist per state statute, period, finish.
Yes, sir.
That's the reason it's here.
Yes,
So
sir.
the itemized budget is our yearly
Right.
budget submitted by
Yes, sir.
CRA to us.
Yes, sir.
And this is an overview of the total package of what's gonna
For the
happen.
next
Yes, sir.
20 years.
This gives you generalized costs and a generalized time frame for implementation.
Okay.
So is this a 2021 community redevelopment plan or 2022?
It was developed in 2021 and being adopted in 2022. So it could be either one. We can just say 2022 because that's when it's
I think
adopted.
that's a good idea.
Okay.
I think we have another question or comment behind
Yes,
you
sir.
here, Mr. Mendel.
Sir, what you just said makes no sense. You just said that this is used as a plan and a guide, and how much money you have available. You got a $6.8 million project out there that's not in here. You have line items in here. Lakeview Drive, Rescape Refresh, $66,000 design, $414,000 construction. Give me a break. You're not gonna put a $6.8 million project in here? You just said if you don't have the funds in here, you might not be able to do some projects. Well, you're missing $6.8 million. The total of all this for your capital improvements is only $1.3 million for next year. So you're short of funds. That makes no sense. Also, the 2.5%, what I was talking about was for the construction, not real estate. And 2.5% is the overall average over a 20-year span. But you don't have to use that in your planning purpose when you know that escalation is going to be up at 7% this year and next year. And most of the forecasts that I've seen, and I've seen a lot of them, seen companies spend thousands of dollars to get this information, is somewhere for the next 5 years. After the next 2 years, it's going to be 4 to 7% for the next 3 years after that. you're shortfalling yourself.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Any other comments? Come on up. Tell us who you are, what you'd like to say.
Hi, my name is Gosai Ibanez, and I own several properties in the city. And it's funny, Mr. Lydell asking for more money when they're giving our money, tax money, away through the CRA that nobody oversees them. Per se, the plumbing building was given away through the CRA. Go online and check the business plan or program that people that he gave it away to have, to the requirements they publish on the internet. Now, we have all these millions of dollars for the CRA. What about the existing historical buildings in the circle? Do we have any money for those buildings? I own one now. I bought one. Guess how much they offer me for the 101 center to maintain the building and give it a good facelift? $1,000 to paint the whole building. That's the CRA. Ask them what to do with our money. How much we spent already in buildings we gave away under the plan? Over $1 million. The plumbing building, the one gave it to Faded, the gallery. That's going to be another disaster that we have on the map when we build that kitchen. Go and check Gourmet Goodies online and check against the requirements they had. Come on. White is white and black is black. It's more than clear that somebody using our funds to fund their friends. Now we have to spend another from their budget, $125,000 to build that business that we gave away. Under the promise they're going to pay us back. $125,000 of our tax money. What about those historical buildings that are over 100 years old? You guys want to say to happen to the Hardy Hall, to the Kennyworth Lodge, or the Hardy Hall building? Go to nowhere? Well, that's our pride, the historical buildings. What about the preservation of those buildings? The historical, the one right now in the Seabring circle. No budget, $1,000 that the CRA is giving for the preservation of the historical buildings. Is that fair? That the CRA, I don't know who oversees them. I'm going to find out. But I would love for you guys to go online, gourmetgoodies.com. They gave a building to them. They had no money even to build the business. And it's totally a different business plan than what they were asking. Somebody's making the money down there. I wonder who's giving that money. I want you guys to think about the preservation of our historical buildings on the circle. There's no funds at all for those buildings. You think $1,000 will paint one of those buildings? The paint alone, the last budget, the last quote I had on painting that building was $33,000. $1,000, come on. Think about it, guys. With the next budget for the CRA, I would love to know who supervises them, what they do with our money. Seems like nobody. They just come with you guys. This is what we want you guys to approve. You just approve it. Look on Gourmet Goodies for the plumbing building, and see who was pushing that very hard. The guy next to me.
Thank you. Anyone else like to make any additional comments? Okay. I have a little question here to Mr. Swain. Do we need to do a public meeting tonight for this?
There needs to be a public hearing before a final approval by city council of the plan, as city council sits as the governing body and by statute approves an amendment to the plan. I believe the public hearing is proposed to be prior to what would be second and final reading of the ordinance.
Okay, so we just need one public hearing?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so then we can take motions on this now.
Yes, sir.
To approve this ordinance, is that
I'd
correct?
like to ask David a question.
Yes, sir.
He referred to getting $1,000 to paint his building. Can you explain, what the programs are, where he applies for money? How do y'all determine who gets what? Maybe that'll clear up some.
So every year, we have to make when we're creating our budget, we have to make the decision what grants, which projects are going to get funded. Because this year, we were looking at the acquisition of the vacant buildings downtown. That was our main focus. We still felt that the facade grant program was important, and that's $1,000 right now. So if you have a big building, yes, $1,000 isn't as significant. If you own a house in the district, it plays a pretty good part. Pressure washing and painting are the eligible reimbursable costs for that.
And that's $1,000.
Correct.
Okay. And who oversees the spending of your money?
The board does.
The CRA board?
The CRA board is the one that comes
So-
together, budgets, and approves
Okay.
it.
So they need to go sit down with the CRA board instead of city council and discuss these things.
It would be more appropriate, yes.
Yes, okay. Well, that's all, you know, we don't make your budget.
Correct.
And we don't approve your budget.
Right,
Huh?
right, that's correct.
Yeah.
We approve the spending of their money.
Right, but we don't make their budget, we don't decide their
Right.
facade grants
Right.
and stuff like that.
And we
So-
approve the appointment of the board members.
Right, so but the city council doesn't do their facade grants.
Right.
And stuff like that. That's all, that's the point I'm trying to make, is
Right.
they do have,
Sure.
they're overseen by a board, just
Right.
like
It's
city
a separate
council.
entity.
Right, right.
Right.
That's the word. Separate
David,
entity.
can I dovetail on a question
Yes, sir.
on that? Does the board take into consideration in their annual budget of the cost of building materials? So for example, we've been given $1,000, I know for quite a few years, for painting the facade of buildings. Considering the fact that building materials have gone up so significantly, would the board consider raising that amount for both businesses and residential?
Yes, sir. It's a conversation we typically have every year. Last year, we were higher, and I can't remember if it was $1,500 or $5,000. There's been years it's been up to $10,000. We had a program one year, there was a grant program for up to $100,000 for specifically the circle buildings on the
Right.
circle.
I remember.
We got no applicants for that. And so when the demand comes down, instead of leaving those dollars idle, we'll shift the focus. And the demand for facade grants has dropped here recently.
So I think you should go to the board and understand each other's position. Well, and what I mean by that is, now, hang on a second, that you buy the building regardless of whether or not the CRA has money to give you, correct? Otherwise, I can't believe you would buy it. And anything they give you is a gift, but what you're looking for is something that might be a little bit more appropriate toward your end goal and the overall appearance and the preservation of our downtown district. So, having said that, I really think you should take that to the board and discuss that with them. Yeah.
No,
Well,
we're talking about go
take it
before
to
the board.
Christie is the executive director, but she's not the whole board. All she does is make recommendations to the board, just like here, and then we have to vote on it. So go that route and see what happens. Give it a shot.
I went through that with the plumbing building and look what happened. Please do for the plumbing building.
Give it a shot. You know what they say, keep
But the
charging.
one for the plumbing building, like, oh, it pushes so hard.
Yep,
When I come, it's not even to a corporate, it's even from Highlands County, ain't city.
right.
Look at the business model online, and look what they requested, and look what Mr. Lydell pushed for.
Right.
It's
Well-
really, really suspicious.
Well, I wouldn't look at it from that perspective. I look at it for the possibility
I'm gonna
of,
try, I'm gonna go to the board, whatever it happens, I'm gonna make it public, honestly, I'm gonna go on social media to say,
Okay.
You know, the first time I probably did that.
and then maybe you might want to check with other CRAs to see what they do as a comparison. Help them out. Don't fight them, help them out. That's all I'm
You
asking.
know why I bought the building? Because I wanted to open a business in the circle.
Yes.
Instead of spending millions of dollars like we're doing the master plan.
Yep,
Why do you guys give incentives to the investors like me to revive the circle? I'm opening a soft shop also, besides the building I bought there. I didn't have to wait for them to do any kinky business to get a building.
Right.
Like they did already, to my opinion. So come on, let's be realistic. You're giving money away, look who you give it away to. It's also my money, I pay I have in the city alone, over $1 million in property.
well, if you ever find anything dishonest going on in our city, you make sure you bring it right back here.
I wish
Okay.
you could see how it went when he appointed the.
I don't think you're gonna find it.
Yep.
No, not from you guys, the CRA has a lot of fifty business.
Okay, I don't think you're gonna find it with the CRA. These guys are volunteering their time, they're doing a lot of hard work, and they are doing a lot of stuff on the circle, as well as the waterfront. They're trying to enhance the city, so.
Thank you.
You could
Okay.
be a board member someday, by the way.
Really?
You could be a board member someday.
I was gonna run for the city councilor. I don't live in city, unfortunately.
Okay.
But I was gonna run for city council.
Okay.
I stop all.
County commission.
All right. Any other thoughts or questions from council members?
Oh, no, I'm done.
Okay. Any motions?
You know, actually, I'm not. Hang on.
Okay.
Tom Mendel made a point on the Lakeview Drive project that hasn't been done, but it's in this plan. Is that correct or not? Well, then why not put the waterfront plan in?
The waterfront plan is referenced in the document as being one of the redevelopment strategies of the CRA. The waterfront plan allocation for the budget has not officially been acted on by the CRA board and is not included in their annual work plan as of this time.
Okay?
So to place it in the work plan now would be misrepresenting the actions of the CRA.
Okay, so the Lakeview plan has been though. Is that what you're saying?
The Lakeview plan was not developed at the time that this was completed, so we said we were going to support, this plan says it will support waterfront development and the waterfront redevelopment plan.
You just threw me off. I was blonde when I grew up and anybody else in the same position I am, I'm not sure.
Are you referring to two different projects?
Yeah. Mr. Mendel had cited in this document.
The road project.
A certain dollar figure for the Lakeview Drive road project. We haven't acted on that plan and that's not in our current budget. Am I correct on that?
It is not in the current budget, no.
So neither is the waterfront plan. So why wouldn't we just include that then? I mean, I'm back to what Mark said in the first place. Mr. Stewart, I should say.
Let me ask a question. Do you have the money to do the road project?
Yes.
You have that money?
Yes.
But the loan, they don't have the loan for the waterfront.
Well, they have a loan, but which they're gonna
Okay,
add
well,
to.
maybe does that make the difference then? And-
I think it would make a huge difference if we were to come before you at the mid-April meeting and we had our financing put together and we're ready to do it and you guys said no. Well, then that shuts down, certain projects.
Are you talking about the waterfront?
Mm-hmm.
We've already said yes.
Well, you've said yes, but we still have to get the funding, right?
We're gonna finalize it.
On you.
Correct. But it's your approval that we rely on. You have to approve this loan. So, yes, it's on us to go get, but we have to bring it to you
And
for
we
your
haven't
approval.
approved it.
And you haven't approved that.
Okay.
You can't put something in a budget that you don't have. Or it's not, I guess.
Well, I'm glad we only have to do this once every 20 years. Because I'll be 92, I guess, on
This is the last time. It
2043,
cannot-
and I'll probably still be up here.
Can't be extended after 43, I believe.
So I want to just say that I'm on board with the CRA and everything you guys
Yes.
are doing, and I don't distrust you at all. I think you're honest and upright, and you're doing the right thing. I
Absolutely.
think this gentleman didn't have an opportunity to buy one of the properties that you purchased. He bought his own building prior to all this happening. But I have to admit to some confusion here, and maybe it's because I'm a carpenter instead of a bookkeeper,
May I ask a question of the consultant?
Yeah.
So, does the budget through 2043, because that would be a very difficult budget to come up with, really have to appear in this master plan in order for it to get authorization at the state level? I assume there's a
Yes.
subsequent, so.
Yes, there's a reference in 163-362 regarding the contents of community redevelopment plans where you have to show the general timeframe and cost for the projects identified.
So, the waterfront is in there, it is identified in there.
Yes, sir.
Yes, it is.
And, but you didn't really show the cost.
Yes, sir.
Right, not by dollar figure, it isn't.
Would it be a big deal to go back and redo this and show that cost before we approve it?
That would be at the discretion of the CRA board to put in a cost that has not yet been finalized or included in an annual work.
Yeah, because most of these costs have not been finalized or.
Yeah, so I don't see how hard that would be, and I think it would just appease me and others. tell me why you can't. I mean, I don't get it. It just, I know it's a broad,
I mean, I think if we come
Brush.
back, we would come back and say that we will choose the high number of $28 million, and everybody will lose their mind, because we want it to be a broad stretch, right? I
well,
mean,
but what we're asking for is what we've already approved to be shown. And then you'll have to come back at some point for any additional funds.
What happens, John, okay, so if you add in the $6.3 million that was approved, and then there's a phase 2 that's not been budgeted, do we have to amend the plan?
No, sir.
No.
We can have it in there. It's just, is it finalized? Do you know what it's going to be spent for? Do you have the dates that it's going to be spent?
But,
No,
so, but the budget.
we do not.
But the budget you have in there is tentative. So if you go ahead and put that dollar figure in there, it's tentative, but at least it's in there. Is that hard? I don't think that's very hard. I think you could do that real easy.
That's not inappropriate or unethical, is it, Mr. Jones?
No, sir.
Then why don't we do that and bring it back on April 5th if you have time to?
It'll have
play
to
with those
come,
figures?
it'll have to go back to our board for approval again.
When's your next board?
In April,
Okay.
April 2nd Tuesday.
that
Yeah,
what-
it's
is that
usually the
time
day
frame gonna mess,
Monday before our
any
meeting.
type
April
thing up?
11th.
It
Before
pushes
y'all's.
back our financing, and, you know,
Well, so I would be happy to come in anytime to sit with you guys. And if we could public notice another meeting and do it faster, I'm happy to do that. I'm sure these guys are too.
Is there a time frame where this has to be submitted?
Call the board.
State that
The
required.
first one, the end of this year, I think is when it needs to be submitted.
So you have time.
The revision of the budgetary worksheet would not substantively change the document itself, and it may not require another hearing by the CRA board.
okay.
The
So-
only thing that can't be changed, Mr. Swain, please correct me if I'm speaking out of turn, is that everything after the title in the ordinance can't be changed. Or can be changed, but the title of the ordinance can't be
As
changed.
long as the change is not significant enough to require a change in the title to accurately describe what's in it, then it's
Correct.
not considered a problem to change something between first reading and second reading of an ordinance. Minor changes are fine to move along with. If you have a major change, then you have to start all over. Again, start all over with first reading, that is.
Well, would changing, including that dollar figure, be a minor or a major change in your perception?
Certainly in the world, when you're talking, whatever that big number is,
Yeah.
32 million,
Yeah.
6 is not as substantial as when you're comparing it to $66,000 projects.
Yeah.
So it certainly that would not change the title. I mean, you're really saying clarify these budget numbers
Right.
and
Right.
include numbers that we think you could add, and that to me is not changing what they want to
Okay.
do.
I also think that, and please don't be offended, because you're a volunteer and I can't praise you enough for what you're doing. Particularly to the abuse that gets thrown at you erroneously. And I don't mean to be doing that, but I do think there are some other elements of Mr. Mendel's conversation that you may want to consider
Right.
as well. Just to be forthright and to be open with the public and to kind of, to be a document that won't have the negative effect that this may have without those numbers in there.
Very well.
If I'm understanding correctly, then if you add this $6 million in there for phase 1 of the waterfront, then some of those other projects may have to get eliminated or scaled back in some capacity so that
No.
you come up with a
No?
total
No, that's not,
reasonable number.
that's not at all.
That's not
at
what
all.
it is.
It doesn't have to balance.
We're just we're just saying
Okay.
they're probably gonna spend this money, but not definitively. It's
Right.
just in this broad brush stroke.
Okay. Is council pretty much in agreement with that, come back with
One
that
question.
included?
Mr. Jones, did I hear you correctly that you said that it probably would not have to go back before the CRA board, though?
Correct.
So why can't we go ahead and pass this tonight with the addition of the 6.8 million, that will be, $1 million that will be included into the plan?
Talk to them.
Is there any reason why we can't?
What do you think about that?
You can do that.
Don't see any
can
reason
do
why we
that.
shouldn't.
Just like
or
we did the
can't.
last one, just add the conversation.
Right. Just a sort of clarifying.
Okay. All right.
Mayor,
What are you
would you
thinking
please talk to us? What-
Look at the look.
I mean,
He's rummaging through
I
these
think we're
papers.
still getting confused about the details of what's gonna happen down the road. And I agree, the budget, because I talked to David, said, should this be budgeted, should it not, but it's in the plan, so if you read through the whole ordinance that we're approving, it's approving the plan, it's not approving a budget.
Right.
So we're approving the plan, and it says, upon ordinance of Seabring City Council will adopt the 21-20 plan and extend the implementation period for the 2021 Seabring Community Redevelopment through 2043. So that's really what we're approving, correct?
Correct.
I mean, we're not approving any kind of budget. The
No,
plan is the
but-
first part.
Right, but
But you can.
this is a plan. We made the plan for the waterfront.
Correct, which is in the plan. And I think, and this is where this thing is, the way the government works this thing is just, to me, and I try to read up on some CRA stuff, but this plan has to be approved, okay? As a plan, and it says in that ordinance that it's pretty much a living document, that it moves. But we're not approving a budget, we're approving their plan, which includes the waterfront, which includes Lakeview Drive, which includes, I think there's 5 or 6 or 8 or 10 other road projects in this thing. So we're not approving the budget, we're approving the plan, if I'm not extending the plan to 2043.
You're extending the life of the CRA, and you would be approving the plan. One component of the plan is this sort of financial, estimation of various projects that they want to undertake. You aren't swearing by those dollars. The waterfront plan, as I understand it, is just the engineer's good guess as to cost.
Just an estimation.
There's not been final design, there's not been bid numbers. I mean,
There's a long way to go.
it's nowhere near,
It's kind of like a house plan.
And I think it's gonna be prudent for us, when that budget comes up for the waterfront,
Right.
is that we're gonna wanna see, this is what it's gonna take, this is the timeline, this is where we're gonna end up. And that's gonna be kind of what we're gonna approve is it's gonna be engineering, it's gonna be demolition, it's gonna be construction, it's gonna be yada, 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 and this is what the plan. And we've gotta finalize, we approved that final plan for the waterfront outside of the CRA's working plan, which the waterfront is in the working plan by name, maybe not in the numbers, but I think we're really just approving the working plan. I mean, it doesn't make business sense to me.
Me neither.
But if you think like the government, this is a great plan.
That's right.
Because nobody knows what the hell's gonna happen, until it happens. And then we're gonna lie about it, correct? So, but that's the difference in what this plan is really, what this ordinance is approving their working plan.
Well, extending the viability for another 20 years.
20 years. And if
Yeah.
we don't do that, then the CRA's gone, we lose the TIF money and everything.
Well, we're not-
We don't wanna
don't
do
wanna
that,
lose that.
so. But that's where this thing is getting to be so muddy.
Yeah.
Is that we're not into the specifics, we're into the plan itself, so, but.
Well, since it's not specific and it is a living document,
living
as you have
document.
indicated.
Correct.
Let's go ahead and put that 6 point something in there, so at least
Well,
it's
that's
in
fine,
there.
yeah. I think I
And we
like
can
what-
go ahead and vote on this with that caveat that you're gonna do that when
I
you
think
bring it
that's
back
what
next
Chief
time.
Detman is a good idea to do it that way.
Yeah, I think it's because the amount of money,
Well,
that is
it's
such a
also-
significant amount of money as compared to
Well-
the streetscape plan or anything else, so
But it's also such a contentious concept.
Right.
So if we do this, it takes away that,
right?
because we don't need any more of that contention. And I realize, and I agree with Mr. Mendel, that there are other areas to your broad stroke budget that are probably not accurate. But it is a living document, and I can handle that. You put this big one in there, and I'm gonna vote yes. If you don't, I'm gonna have to vote no.
Put it in.
So
Take a
what-
yes.
What would be the correct figure?
That's easy.
David, what
Sir.
would be the correct figure then to add into this in the form of a motion? 6.3?
6.3,
Yeah, what we agreed on.
yes.
Okay.
Okay,
But that don't necessarily mean we're gonna spend.
No, it doesn't.
that's correct.
That's the best number
One
they have
thing,
at the moment.
one thing that I think we also, the mayor hit it on the nail. We're dealing with government stuff. This is not like a private entity.
Right.
You know, when we make a decision as a private entity, like when you build your building, you know what you're gonna, or buy your building, you know what you're gonna do. We don't know what the government's gonna do from day to day. So.
Not only that, we wouldn't even be doing this if the state of Florida didn't require it.
Exactly. So.
We'd be running it more like a business that way. Even though it is run like a business, it would.
It's
it
not.
Wouldn't need this, it wouldn't need this 118 or 20.
Okay, all right, let's move along a little bit here.
I'm ready to make a motion now.
We got.
Okay.
Gentlemen, I'd like just to make
Tom.
one more comment.
Okay,
want you to know, I
you can
met
have a
with-
chance after the motion is made, okay, please, sir?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm gonna make a motion that we approve, and let's call it the 2022 Seabring Community Redevelopment Agency Master Plan and Ordinance 1497 on first reading and schedule a public hearing and second final reading for April 5th with the inclusion of $6.3 million identified as the Waterfront project.
Okay, I have a motion
Second.
and a second. I have a motion and a second. Any comments from the council members?
This is splitting hairs again.
Right.
As far as the 2022, but we're in 2021, and that includes that budget year.
Right.
If we're 22, that means it's 22 to 23, because we're an odd year. And this may be wrong altogether, but I'm just.
Right now, we're in
We're
21,
approving it as
22.
a-
We're
I
in
know, that's what I'm
22
saying.
too.
Yeah.
So, but this includes the 21, 22.
Since the CRA has thus, up until now, called it the 2021 plan, it may be more easier, more consistent.
I'll amend that
to sort of
motion,
stick with that
2021
number.
plan. 2021, just like I said the first time.
Okay. Any other comments from council members?
That's what I
Aye.
heard, 2021.
Comments from the public, Mr. Mendel.
Yes, sir. I just want you all to know, I met with CRA, and all the comments I gave you tonight, I gave to them last night. So it's not caught them by surprise.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate your help, Tom.
I have a motion and a second. No other comments? Kathy, would you call the roll, please?
Bishop,
Yes.
Carlisle,
Yes.
Detman.
Yes.
Stewart.
Yes.
Lawrence.
Yes. Okay. Has the parade started downtown yet? Uh,
Well,
Okay,
Charlie,
any business from the audience, Kathy?
No, sir.
Okay. City attorney's business.
For your consideration on first reading is an ordinance entitled, an ordinance amending section 11-37 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Seabring, correcting the number of members constituting a quorum of the Seabring Historic Preservation Commission, providing for severability, providing for conflict, and providing for an effective date. This trues up the number of, that would be a quorum when the board dropped from 7 to 5. It still read 4, we're gonna say a majority of.
Okay. All right. Any comments or questions about the, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, sir. Comments or questions in regards to the proposed ordinance?
No, sir.
Comments or questions from the public in regards to the ordinance? Okay.
I make a motion, we approve proposed ordinance on first reading and schedule second and final reading April 5th, 2022.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any other comments from the public? Any comments from council members? Kathy, would you call the roll, please?
I don't know who
Bishop.
seconded. Did you
Yes.
second that?
Carlisle.
No, Mark. I don't know who did.
Carlisle,
Yep.
Detman,
Yes.
Stewart,
Yes.
Lawrence.
Yes. City administrator's business.
I have none.
Oh, none. Okay, it's gonna be the city clerk's business next, but after hers, I know everybody tries to take off, but I have a couple of comments I'd like to make after we make the motion for the city
Well, I have
clerks.
something before we do the motion for the bills. This, failed to, probably miscommunication that would be put on the agenda. The Seabring firemen are having a barbecue at Fireman's Field April 8th and 9th. They have asked permission to put banners on the circle the week before. That failed to get on this agenda. I take responsibility for that, but, if I could have, by the next meeting, it'll be too late for them to put the banners on the circle the week before the event. So I'm asking on their behalf permission to, for them to be able to put the banners on the circle, for the Seabring Fireman Barbecue.
So
Go for it.
Okay, is that any conflict with, didn't we have somebody else that wanted to put banners up there?
For that week?
I'm not sure which week it was.
Not that I
We're
know.
doing
Okay.
I mean, no, because the scarf thing is on there.
Yeah,
Scarf's
here.
on there now. The only other items that I can think of in April are April 15th.
But that'll be before this. This is April 8th and 9th.
And then
And Bobby can talk to his wife if there's a conflict. I'm
there
sorry.
may be there may be another religious event on the 8th or 9th.
Yes.
We'll
cross
coordinate.
specialties,
Don't
yeah.
think the other one is the 10th.
We'll coordinate. We'll coordinate.
Okay, if you
Okay.
coordinate. Okay, I need a motion.
Bishop,
Yes.
Carlisle,
Yes.
Bettman,
Yes.
Stewart.
Yes.
Lawrence.
Yes.
Okay, now council needs to approve the payment.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any comments from the public? Comments from council members or questions?
Who seconded? I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. Apologize.
Okay, Kathy, call the roll, please.
Bishop,
Yes.
Carlisle,
Yes.
Bettman,
Yes.
Stewart,
Yes.
Lawrence.
Yes. Is that all?
That's all, yes, sir.
Okay, I have a couple comments here. As you all know, this will be my last city council meeting as a city councilman. I am both honored to have served for 6 years and very humbled to have come in last in a three-way race for another term. I enjoyed working with my fellow council members as well as the city staff. During my 6 years, here are a few of the things that I advocated for and we as a council accomplished. First one was we voted to add both firemen and policemen to the Florida retirement system so that they were equal to all other city employees that were already in the FRS. This has benefited the city by allowing the city to be competitive in hiring new firefighters and police officers. Number two, each year I was here, we were able to give our city employees small raises. This is necessary to keep good employees, and employees are what run our city. The next one, when there was a school shooting in South Florida, y'all probably remember that. I strongly advocated for school resource officers to be installed in all of our schools. This we did well ahead of the state mandate for the exact same thing. With much discussion, we rewrote the sign ordinance for our city, and we kept it somewhat business-friendly. Somewhat. When medical marijuana became legal in our state, in a close vote, we allowed it to be sold within our city limits. This is a great benefit to those that need it for such things as cancer and PTSD. So I want to just thank my fellow council members for some of these votes. We also grew our city by annexing many of the properties along US 27. I have supported the CRA in their efforts to enhance our